Hi, research community. How are you doing? How are you spending your days maintaining the quarantine, the lockdown? We really miss you and we want to turn back to school as soon as possible. But by the moment, in the meantime, let's make some videos in English. Well, sorry for my broken English, and for my bad jokes. And this is a good moment for studying The Americans by Robert Frank, a milestone in photography that changed the source of photography 60 years ago. This is an 90s edition, larger, bigger than the original one, and it will be useful for showing you not only the 83 images but also the layout and the meaning of the book. I hope you'll enjoy it, and let's go for it. Okay, let's start with the book. This is the cover. As I told you in the presentation, it's an 1990s edition, and the original one, published in 1958, wasn't the same. It was even with no pictures on the cover. It was a drawing. The edition in 1959, the first one in America, because the first one was published in France, included a picture, but a different one that I will tell you later. This book is classical in the sense that there's an introduction written by Jack Kerouac, the beat novelist, the one who wrote On the Road. It's short, some pages. It's a little bit surrealistic, and it starts with the pictures always on the right side. There's no pictures on the left side, because it's classical, and because the first edition, the French edition, on the left pages appear a text written by French writers who spoke ideas about America. With the American editions, this text was banned, disappeared, and the images appears in a sequence, not in. You are not able for seeing two at the same time. So this one is very symbolic. It represents the idea of the American flag is covering the faces, as telling in a symbolic way. America, the community is, hiding identity, individuality. This book, when it was published, the critics were very, very hard with it. They say American writers specialized in photography. They say this book is dark, depressive, fuzzy images are fuzzy, blurred, and depressing, and probably anti-American. In fact, Robert Frank, who was born in Switzerland but traveled to America when he was 23 in 1947, he developed this project with a grant, with a fellowship, the Guggenheim's fellowship, and he was traveling in 1955 and 1956 in a second-hand car and taking pictures, sometimes traveling alone, sometimes with his family. And the idea is to represent America. But when he delivered the images to Guggenheim for justifying the fellowship, they were upset because it was very, very different than the expected idea they got about the project. Okay, there's no a line, narrative line with presentation, conflict and resolution like classical histories. This is more an static, emotional graphic edition where the subjects, the images appears mixed, New York and then San Francisco and then Texas, and then there's no narrative line. It's like a series of impressions, and probably the elements that you know fixes the photo edition are elements like the flag that appears here, and then appears a hat and somebody who's doing a strange expression like mocking, no? And this one is two, and the hats appears again. But for instance, this is a funeral in Alabama, but the image of the people who died and all Afro-American person appears 40 images later. There's no other classical sequence, narrative sequence of images. In that way, it's innovative. Okay, hats again, hats and cigar, and then the flag, and then the stars of a flag. These pictures is a strange composition. Robert Frank is influential in the sense that he broke the idea of decisive moment, the Henri Cartier-Bresson decisive moment. If you are in the right place, in the right spot, in the right moment, you are able for getting the best people of a subject, of an action. Robert Frank proposes the in-between. Everything is interesting and subjective. You are free for choosing your own decisive moment. And then appears stars. Hollywood is a Hollywood premiere, and probably this element mixes with this one, and this one is symbolic in the sense, no? There's a letter here, made blinds, and the kid is I'd shoot, and the jukebox seems to be pointing to him. You know, the line is declining. I wrote an essay called La línea torcida del horizonte. Translation could be the declining line of the horizon, explaining that the book that contains 83 images got 38 images where the line is falling down, is declining to the right side. Obviously because Robert Frank wanted to do that, because he was able for cropping and rebalancing and, you know, fitting the line theoretically correct, no? But he decided not to do that. No? You know, kids in a drive-in theater, you know, and three guys from Puerto Rican guys, you know, getting fun but covering the face, and funny things between marks, like, you know, this black lady as a nanny, no, taking care of this baby girl who looks like this one. There's relationships. When the card appears, people seems to be sad, not happy. And you know, there's a line in here that this diagonal seems similar, because he chooses to fit the important part, the important subject of the image on the margins, on the corners of the image. The American flag again, and this one was the picture that was originally used for the cover for 1959 edition. This is very Cartier-Bresson in the sense that, you know, lines are straight and everything is balanced. I suppose he used it because it's political, no? Is in a trolley bus in New Orleans, where, you know, there's a segregation, black, whites and black, and the kids seems to be the future. You know, the crowd, people crossing, this guy who's looking at us, a beheaded person in an ancient place, low moments between marks. Nothing is happening really important in a graduation ceremony. You know, this guy who is waiting, and you know the Duke's box again, that seems to be close, you know, like a danger of things. You know, the idea it could falls down and clashing the boy. Some kids, you know, I like this one very much. The guy who is hesitating which one I will use. You know, freedom for choosing, but sometimes the freedom to choice is a limitation. And rich persons, and this picture is subjective. John Sarkowski used to say that as to keep different kinds of images, mirrors and windows, and documentary is mainly a window to the reality. But Robert Frank, despite his explaining America, his own vision of America is subjective. It's like a glass, like a window pane where you are able for seeing his reflect. This is the reason why curtains appears. Instead of showing you Butte, Montana, is like telling us, okay, this is my morning vision of Butte, Montana when I woke up. You know, New York City, a guy, feet cropped, looking at us, and with a magazine awake, but he seems to be a little bit out of the blue. And this one probably taken from the wrist, using from the hip. You know, there's some tension. This is a cowboy. What is happening here? We are not sure. And on the road for sure. There are several images in Las Vegas. And this one, I love this one. Two Indians are driving the car owned by Robert Frank. And you know, because the shot, because the how the road was developed, there is no details outside, but it seems it could be a mistake. But for me, it's the clue that because they seems to be riding to nowhere, they are in a capsule, they are running on empty in a certain way. You know, profiles again. Cars' faces. I love this one. The car that you are taking care for, you know, covering, trying to avoid the sun in California, destroying the colors of the car, is the one that kills you. It's interesting. This series of is an accident on Route 66, and looking watching the contact sheet of these images, the first picture is like a picture that could appear in a magazine or in a newspaper. An accident, a crash accident, and death people in Route 66. The police, the crashed car, but he moves still simplifying or representing the idea of the death on the road. You know, the long road, the empty road to nowhere, maybe. An American masters, Lincoln, Washington, the flag. And you know, a barber shop, when you can see him, you are able for seeing him, his reflection on the glass, and the lines falling down again. This is a little bit messy. I don't like all the pictures of the 83 pictures that he chose from a selection of 737 rolls that he finally edited 1,000 copies and decided to include 110 more or less in a dummy with the Robert Darfield in Paris that is to resolve in 83 images. So I don't like all them, but I think are really interesting. When appear black people, I think black people seems to be more represented in a more you know, the dignity seems to be the idea for representing black people. And this hooker table, and this is an old station saves like you know, saving money, but also God will save us. This idea of America a little bit obsessed in a certain way with religion. And this one is classical for explaining how he created images avoiding the decisive moment. The subjects are on the margins and seems that something has happened, had happened, but nobody knows why. This is, I don't know, it's like before or after, but not in the peak moment. And this one is classical. The girl on the elevator working in Florida, you know, the line is falling down and she seems to be exhausted. It's like Sisyphus Smith, you know? I will be here the whole eternity. I will be working on it. Lines falling down, TV sets falling down, you know, declining. Drive-ins, and these blacks between marks saint how seems you know, the cross is, there's a chapter with crosses. The cross again in LA, the cross is after in a place where somebody died in a car crash, and then alienation working on a factory in Detroit, you know, politicals in Detroit, like the mob. And this picture, try to imagine you got a grant, a fellowship with the Guggenheims, and you're offering your image of America, and you decide to include one picture of laboratories, of the toilets. It was shocking for them. But in the 60s, this book started to be a landmark, a milestone, and people started to consider it, and it started to be influential for young photographers in the 60s, street photographers, etc. And right now it is a myth, almost a myth, another social event, you know, dark images. And this lady, you know, who seems to be well, she seems to be happy. The Negro population seems to be the best, the most happy people in America. You know, the dead man. Do you remember the image of the funeral? The cars and the boys with hats, you know, and then Japanese cemetery. This one is mythical too. The guy who disappears behind the instrument. And there's another picture of this situation where you are not published, where the faces of the two persons are included. Why did he choose this one? Probably because he wanted to blur, to avoid the identity. Because if this picture include the two persons, probably are Mike and Carol, but no, you know, people on a parade where the identity is gone, you know. TV sets, television in 1956-55, television was brand new thing. In directions, you know, offices, workers. Okay, details. The cowboy, you know, it could be on the beginning. And the Hollywood premiere where the starlet is out of focus and the lady appears, you know, these people, common people, seems to be the subject. Rich man, married, wife, husband, rich, poor ones, no? You know, alienation again, eating like in a factory. Then the black waiter who seems to be like in a dream. Couple seems to be not so happy. This is a favorite one. Robert Frank said he was born in Switzerland. He came in 1924, came to the States in 1947. He became American citizen and died recently in September 2019. And he used to say, this one is my favorite one because represents the idea of America. There's a chapter dedicated to leisure, to weekends, you know, on parks, on beach. Probably is the part not so brilliant in my humble opinion. No, I like them, but I prefer another ones. No, okay. People on the car, they seem to be sad, and people with the cars having fun. Cars really close to them. Couples, the white ones, the black ones, but the black ones are, you know, melancholic. There's a dignity. And this is the last one, the family. Mary, Pablo and Andrea, a woman and kids, wife and kids, into the car in Texas, telling us there is, you know, a contact sheet telling us that is more than an image of America. It's, you know, a personal vision of America. In fact, the book could, a good title could be The Americans by Robert Frank. Amazing, for sure. This is a classic that it lasts 60 years ago. It's fresh, brand new one in a certain way. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you again soon and take care wherever you are. We miss you. Bye bye.